This video opens with that striking but ultimately shallow quote. The invisible and the non-existent look very much alike. I have to say that's a remarkably weak foundation for the whole presentation. Consider justice itself. It is not a material object. You cannot isolate it in a laboratory or verify it through empirical measurement alone. And yet no reasonable person concludes that justice is therefore non-existent. The same holds for morality as a whole. It possesses real binding force over the human will, even though it transcends the purely sensible order. This kind of rhetoric exposes a troubling double standard that runs through much contemporary atheism. Atheists routinely accept the reality of countless invisible realities like logical laws, mathematical truths, the principles of causality, even the continuity of personal identity over time. Yet they suddenly become strict empiricists the moment the question of God rises. This inconsistency deserves to be highlighted, and that is what I precisely am doing.
Hi, before we begin, I just want to ask you something simple. Have you ever wondered why people believe in something they've never seen, never heard, never touched, and never measured, yet they're absolutely sure it's real? Not just one or two people, but billions. That's what this video is about. People often say the idea of God brings them comfort, but comfort isn't the same as truth. If someone told you your family member was still alive just to spare you pain, that might comfort you, but it wouldn't make it true. When something feels good, that doesn't make it right. That distinction matters, because if we don't question what feels good, we can end up living our whole lives inside a story that was never real. The idea of God is one of the most powerful stories ever told. It's been passed down for thousands of years in different forms, but repetition isn't evidence. Age doesn't make something accurate. If a lie is told long enough, it can feel like truth, but feelings aren't proof either. One of the strongest reasons people believe in God is because they were raised to. It's not about logic, it's about repetition and reinforcement. Children are taught about God before they can even read or write. They're told not to question it. That alone should make us pause. If something is true, it doesn't need to be protected from questions. But when it comes to God, even asking is often treated as wrong. That's not how truth works. Another reason people believe is because they see complexity in the world and assume it must have been created. That's the classic watchmaker argument. If you find a watch on the ground, you assume someone made it. So the thinking goes, if the universe is even more complex, someone must have made it too. But this logic has a blind spot. If complexity requires a creator, then who created the creator? If you say God doesn't need a creator, then you've broken your own rule. This is a form of special pleading, making an exception for God without justification. That's not reasoning, it's protecting a belief. If you allow for one uncaused thing, it might as well be the universe itself. There's no need to insert a God into the gap. Some say God is the...
This speaker, like so many others I've encountered, clearly has not engaged seriously with the classical theistic arguments. He portrays believers as clinging to a blind, reasonless faith, devoid of intellectual content. That caricature is simply false. The Christian position is not a leap in the dark. We rest upon the well-attested historicity of Jesus Christ, a fact granted by the vast majority of serious historians, together with a robust metaphysical foundation. The great arguments of natural reason, like the argument from motion demonstrating the necessity of a first unmoved mover, the argument for contingency showing the need for a necessary being, the argument from efficient causality, and the argument from objective morality all converge with remarkable coherence upon one and the same conclusion, that there must exist a being who is pure actuality, utterly without potency, in whom essence and existence are identical. This is what we mean when we speak of God, not some being among beings, but subsistent being itself, ipsum esse subsistens, the ground and source of all finite existence. Nor is this the whole of our case. Layered upon these demonstrations of reason, we find the abundant testimony of the Church across the ages. like verified Marian apparitions subjected to rigorous investigation. Eucharistic miracles whose physical properties have defied natural explanation, and the transformed lives of countless individuals bearing witness to genuine miracles and encounters with the divine. These are not private feelings but public signs ordered toward the intellect's ascent. One can easily reverse the question: what positive justification does the atheist offer for his own foundational commitments? Why does he accept a universe that, on his principles, appears ultimately unintelligible, arising from nothing, ordered by blind chance, and destined for final dissolution? No serious theist worthy of the name has ever argued that God must exist merely because the idea provides psychological comfort. In point of fact, authentic belief in God frequently demands the most radical discomfort. The crucifixion of the flesh, the daily renunciation of disordered desires, and the embrace of a path that runs directly counter to the inclinations of fallen nature. I genuinely do not understand why this tired objection continues to surface. Naturally, the mere assertion of something by any individual does not render it true. What establishes truth is conformity to reality, adequatio intellectus ad rem, supported by sound demonstration. Consider, for example, the arguments for the immateriality of the human soul. The operations of the intellect and will transcend material conditions and cannot be fully reduced to bodily organs. This points powerfully to the survival of the person beyond death. I can testify from personal experience that belief in God does not always produce feelings of comfort or emotional satisfaction. The way of the cross is real. The idea of God is not a pleasant fiction or comforting myth. It is the term of a rigorous metaphysical demonstration, corroborated by historical testimony and ongoing science, that has withstood every serious attempt at refutation. Miracles continue to occur in our own day as sensible attestations to the active presence of the supernatural order. No, the comfort or emotional satisfaction that belief may occasionally bring is not among the better reasons for accepting theism. Look honestly at the lives of serious converts. They come to the faith because they have weighed the philosophical arguments, examined the historical evidence, and found that the Christian account best explains the data of reason and experience. Belief becomes for them the most reasonable and intellectually responsible position available. And yes, contrary to what is sometimes implied, this is very much a matter of logic and right reason. I do not know what sort of theists this speaker has encountered, but if I am blessed with children, I will certainly encourage them to question and examine the existence of God. Such questioning, when pursued honestly, is not a danger but an opportunity, because when solid answers are given and the intellect finds rest in truth, their faith is purified, deepened, and rendered more personal and convicting. This video repeatedly sets up and attacks strawmen of Christianity. No responsible Christian has ever forbidden honest questioning. The faith has been subjected to relentless philosophical, historical, and scientific scrutiny since the 1st century, and it has not only survived but flourished under that examination. That historical fact carries significant weight. And like I said, no one of sound mind claims that sincere, well-intentioned questions about God are inherently wrong. wrong or dangerous.
Best explanation for why anything exists at all, but that assumes existence needs an explanation outside of itself. Why should nothing be the default? Why do we assume that something existing is strange and needs a cause? Maybe existence is just the baseline, and non-existence is the real puzzle. Even if you think something had to start everything, calling that something God is a leap. It assumes intention, consciousness, morality. But a cause doesn't have to be a mind. Gravity isn't a mind. Chemistry isn't a mind. We see order come from natural laws without anyone planning it. Snowflakes form patterns without a designer. Galaxies spin without direction. Religious people often point to miracles or answered prayers. But studies have looked at this. Double-blind trials have tested whether praying for someone improves their health outcomes. The results show no significant difference. In some cases, patients who knew they were being prayed for actually did worse, likely due to added stress. That's not divine intervention, that's psychology. People also point to moral values and say they must come from God. But morality isn't fixed even within religions. What's right in one holy book is wrong in another. Some religious texts endorse slavery. Some command stoning people for minor offenses. If this morality came from a perfect being, why is it so inconsistent and at times cruel? In reality, moral progress has come not from religion, but often in spite of it. Slavery was defended by churches for centuries. Women's rights were opposed by religious leaders. Same with LGBT rights. Over time, societies have moved past those views, not because of divine command, but because of human empathy, reason, and lived experience. If God existed and wanted us to know Him, why wouldn't that be obvious? Why do thousands of religions exist, each claiming to be the right one? Why would a God create a world where most people end up believing the wrong thing and are then punished for it? If you were designing a system to reveal truth, would you make it that confusing? Some argue that God gave us free will so we can choose to believe. But belief isn't a choice. You either find something convincing or you don't. You can't force yourself to believe in something you think is false. And if God made us, He would have made our minds too. He would have known what it would take to convince us and chose not to do it. Others say you have to take it on faith.
The objection that if God exists and wants us to know Him, why isn't it obvious, is understandable on a superficial level, but it fails to grasp the nature of God we actually confess. We're not speaking of one powerful entity among others who happens to possess existence as an accidental attribute. We are speaking of Him whose very essence is existence, subsistent being itself. God does not receive existence from another. He is the pure act of existing. So the universe and everything in it is radically contingent. No finite thing explains its own existence. That is what precisely makes it contingent. Therefore, the regress of explanation per se, through a per se regress, cannot terminate in yet another contingent reality. It must end in a necessary being or pure act, who is the ultimate source and sustainer of all that is. This metaphysical vision lies at the heart of classical theism, and reveals a profound intelligibility in reality. Our position concerning morality is frequently misrepresented. We do not claim that atheists cannot live morally upright lives, Many manifestly do, often exhibiting natural virtues. The deeper claim is metaphysical. Without God, there is no adequate foundation for objective moral norms that bind all rational creatures across time and culture. For morality to be truly objective and not reducible to mere preference, social convention, or evolutionary byproduct, it must be grounded in the eternal law of God, participated in by creatures through the natural law inscribed in human reason. An atheist may feel strongly that slavery is wrong, but without a transcendent moral lawgiver, such a judgment ultimately rests on subjective or cultural grounds. Only the existence of God as the supreme good and moral lawgiver provides the ontological foundation for saying certain acts are objectively intrinsically evil. Yeah. The natural law is not an arbitrary imposition but a real participation in the divine eternal law. The shifting of moral consensus of societies does not alter objective moral truth. Acts such as homosexual relations remain intrinsically disordered according to the order of being and the natural teleology of the human person. If God exists and desires us to know Him, why does He not make His presence impossible to deny? The answer touches upon the profound respect God shows for human freedom. He wishes us to come to Him not through coercion, but through the free movement of the intellect and will towards what is true, good, and beautiful. He provides sufficient grace, signs, and miracles, but He does not overwhelm the will in a way that would reduce love to servile fear. A spectacle, undeniable intervention might produce belief, but it will not elicit the free filial response of the heart that God desires. No one who is invincibly ignorant of the fullness of the true religion will be condemned on that account. Such a person may still attain salvation through the grace of Christ by sincerely following the moral law written upon the heart. Nevertheless, if all men approached the evidence with genuine humility and openness, unhindered by pride and the wounds of sin, far more would recognize and embrace the truth.
Faith. But faith is what we use when there's no evidence. If we had proof, we wouldn't need faith. We don't have faith that gravity works. We test it. We experience it. We use it to build airplanes and Land Rovers on Mars. But when it comes to God, we're told faith is a virtue. That's just another way of saying, don't ask questions. There's also the argument from personal experience. People say they felt God's presence, but feelings can be deceptive. People feel things during concerts, in nature, during grief. Emotions are powerful, but they don't always point to truth. People have seen ghosts, aliens, spirits, and all kinds of supernatural things. But that doesn't mean those things are real. Brains are meaning-making machines. We see faces in clouds. We hear patterns in noise. We connect events that have no real connection. It's part of being human. So, when people experience coincidences or sudden feelings of clarity, it's easy to attribute those things to a higher power. But that doesn't make it true. It just makes it human. Religious belief also gives people a sense of purpose. But purpose doesn't have to come from above. A purpose you choose is just as real, maybe even more, because it's yours. You're not living out a script, you're writing it. And that's a responsibility, not a burden. People also fear death. That's one of the strongest drivers of belief in God. The idea that we go somewhere, that life continues, that we see our loved ones again, it's deeply comforting. But comfort doesn't equal truth. Just because something makes us feel better doesn't mean it's real. When someone dies, we say they're in a better place. But what if the better place is the life they already had? What if the meaning wasn't waiting for them after death, but was in the moments they lived? Science doesn't claim to have all the answers, but it's honest about what it knows and what it doesn't. Religion, on the other hand, often claims certainty without evidence. It gives answers first, then looks for reasons to believe them. That's backwards. The
So yeah, if God does not exist, then ultimately there is no final purpose or meaning to the cosmos. Everything becomes a temporary and ultimately pointless arrangement of matter. There may be subjective meaning, like worldly goals, but no transcendent telos. Human life reduces in the end to a brief flicker of consciousness destined for extinction. You're only born to die. There is no meaning whether you die now or in 50 years with a family or anything like that. It doesn't really matter because everyone will die in the end. The universe will experience a heat death and nothing will have mattered in the end. It will all be chaff in the wind. Nothing holds any real value. It's all smoke and mirrors.
universe is huge, hundreds of billions of galaxies, trillions of stars, an unimaginable scale. And yet, religious texts often focus on one planet, one species, one tribe. If God created everything, why would his instructions be so narrow, so localized, so outdated? Why would an all-powerful being write a book in a single language for one group of people in the desert, then expect everyone else to figure it out thousands of years later? Why rely on ancient scrolls instead of just showing up? Technology now allows us to...
God did not dictate a book as one might compose a letter. Rather, he inspired human authors working in their own historical and cultural contexts, guiding them by the Holy Spirit without violating their freedom. This is the Catholic doctrine of divine inspiration.
detect distant planets, analyze the genetic code, and map the brain. But we still have zero objective evidence of any deity. Nothing measurable, nothing testable, just stories and interpretations. Many gods were believed in throughout history. The sun god, the god of war, the god of the sea. Over time, people stopped believing in them. Now, it's down to one or two. But the pattern is the same. Humans invent gods to explain what they don't understand. And as understanding grows, those gods shrink. There's no need for a god to explain lightning when we understand electricity. No need for a god to explain disease when we understand germs. No need for a god to explain life when we understand evolution. The gaps are closing, and when people say God works in mysterious ways, it often means we don't know. But not knowing doesn't mean someone must be behind it.
God is not the sort of reality that can be measured or empirically tested like an object within the universe, because by his very nature, he transcends the created order. Were he contained within it, subject to its conditions, he would not be God. Most of the deities proposed throughout pagan history were indeed anthropomorphic projections of human fears, desires, and limited understanding. Only the God of classical theism, that is, pure act, the uncaused cause and necessary ground of all reality, stands as metaphysically coherent and irrefutable. The classical theistic arguments are not God of the gaps fallacies. They arise from attentive consideration of the structure of reality itself. Because finite being is contingent and participated, it necessarily requires a source that is necessary and unparticipated, that which we call pure actuality, which is that which we call God. I'm glad no thoughtful theist defends belief in God on the basis of thunder or other natural phenomena. Such caricatures are easy to dismiss. The real arguments are far more formidable, and evolution properly understood poses no threat to theism. The Church has long embraced theistic evolution, which is God working through secondary causes in the conceiving of life. That is metaphysically far more satisfying and true than the notion that life and consciousness emerge from non-life by purely undirected material processes, something that remains philosophically and scientifically impossible, to be honest.
It just means we haven't figured it out yet. And that's okay. Wonder doesn't need a deity. Awe doesn't require a creator. The universe is fascinating on its own. The burden of proof has always been on the one making the claim. If someone says there's a God, the responsibility is on them to prove it. Until then, not believing isn't a conclusion. It's the default. And when you remove the idea of God, something interesting happens. You're left with the world as it is, fragile, temporary, beautiful. You start to see value in moments, not promises. In people, not spirits. In actions, not prayers. Life becomes about what we do here, not what we hope for later. Morality isn't about reward or punishment, it's about empathy, responsibility, and consequences.
When atheists appeal to empathy and moral intuition while attacking the Christian worldview, they are often borrowing from the very moral capacity Christianity provided. In a consistently materialist universe, nature offers no moral prescriptions. Like a lion that does not feel ethical remorse when it slaughters its prey, without God, empathy for the suffering immigrant or the tortured innocent ultimately lacks any deeper ontological grounding than biological instinct or social utility.
Not what we hope for later. Morality isn't about reward or punishment, it's about empathy, responsibility, and consequences. And meaning isn't handed down, it's built, day by day, choice by choice. When you remove God from the equation, the universe doesn't become less amazing. It becomes more honest. It becomes a place where atoms collide, where stars are born and die, where life emerged from chaos, not because of a plan, but because of conditions. It becomes a story not about obedience, but about discovery. You begin to realize how fragile and improbable your own existence really is, not because someone made you, but because of the sheer unlikelihood of everything aligning the way it did. And that makes life more precious, not less, because no one is keeping it going behind the scenes. It's all on us. People often say, "Look at the beauty of nature. How could this not be designed?" But nature is indifferent. It's beautiful, yes, but it's also brutal. Animals eat their young. Parasites destroy their hosts from the inside out. Natural disasters kill without purpose. If a God designed all this, it would mean he designed cancer in children too.
No, God did not design or will cancer in children as some kind of cruel God. This is an emotional appeal that badly distorts the theistic position. God is goodness itself precisely because he is being itself, and because being and goodness are convertible. Evil is not a positive entity created by God, it is a privation of the good that ought to be, the absence of a due good. Suffering and disease entered the world through the fall of our first parents, which wounded human nature, introduced disorder and creation, and deprived humanity of original justice and immortality. The very fact that we recoil from such evils and instinctively recognize that this is not how things ought to be, itself testifies to a prior state of integrity and points toward the need for redemption.